Welcome to the Recruitment Hackers Podcast, a show about innovations, technology, and leaders in the recruitment industry. Brought to you by TalkPush, the leading recruitment automation platform.
Hello, everybody. This is Max for another episode of the Recruitment Hacks from Max. And today on our show, we have a personal friend of mine who I've known for over a decade, Mr. Darcy Lalonde. Darcy, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Max. Good to chat.
Good to chat. And I'm sure people will appreciate that from one entrepreneur to another entrepreneur, we have a lot of different hats to wear. But today, I'm going to ask you to wear the hat of you as your chief recruiter in chief for most of your companies, even though your responsibilities have been much broader and wider than that. And we're talking about more than 20 years of experience in HR-related roles, human capital technology, HR tech, and oftentimes in a leadership role at either the foundation, the start of a new company, or when that company was scaling, going from a few hundred to a few thousand people. And so we'll try to find out how you build those engines to understand for somebody who also wants to scale up, maybe find some tricks and ideas on how to attract more and better talent. So there's a lot to cover in that 20-year history, but perhaps tell us a little bit about what you're up to now and how you went to, well, maybe let's go back a little bit in time. Tell us about how you got started in HR and HR tech.
Well, it's interesting, coming from a former ice hockey player who became an accountant, got into IT and somehow got into human capital management, which I guess is a lesson learned for many of us, is that as a small child growing up, I had dreams of playing ice hockey. I never had dreams of being an executive in human capital, but it's funny how the different roads, and I think one of the things that sport taught me was the importance of team, the importance of people. And one of the interesting things is that I've always found it, to often be the captain of the team and things like this as a kid. But what really makes things, I think, rewarding is the people around you. And I think that was one of the things as I got into my career, that the people and the team and the folks that work with you are so important. And I must say, over the last 20, 30 years, started up a number of companies of which, I'm very proud to say for a lot of the people that have actually joined those companies one after another, but have been the times of our lives. And, I think that's part of creating the culture of your business and your ecosystem, is that, you do have fun, you have passion, you work hard, you play hard, you create loyalty. And, this was one of the things that I very much enjoyed, was the people aspect. And I came through as an accountant, ended up in IT. And I guess it was interesting that I used to be very critical of human capital and HR professionals as being relatively non-effective, not at the board.
I'm thinking about your introduction, which is very nice, telling us about your, a little bit of coronavirus in the back of my throat, where you're talking about the competitive edge and your background in sports. And I guess the perception from the outside world is, HR and talent acquisition, human capital, that's not really for the competitive bunch. It's more of a support function where it's more about, making sure that everybody's taken care of as opposed to going out to win. Is that what you're referring to when you're saying, didn't think I'd end up in that space?
Yeah, and I guess, one of my challenges that I've given many HR professionals over the last 20 years, since, really getting in the HR space in 2000 when I joined Arinzo, was I'm a supply chain guy, I'm a finance guy. We have supply chains and value chains and activity-based costing and all these things that drive and show, qualified and quantified benefits. HR people, they go for coffee, they chat with people, and I'm being a little bit facetious here, obviously, but I do believe that
As the perception, for sure.
Yeah, it is the perception, and I don't think it needs to be. I think in today's world, more than any time, the HR professionals have the opportunity to step up and really drive business and drive business benefits, drive, people. Because, again, and I've been around a long time, and people are our most important asset. That's been on everybody's webpage for about 10, 20 years now. But do you really have an executive at your boardroom table who is strategically driving the benefits that your people can bring to your business? And can you, as an accountant, quantify that? Can you actually show the benefits? And at the end of the day, the financial impacts on the bottom line, top line, and ultimately sharing. And I will say that's one of the things that I'm very, very big on, is sharing the rewards of the company back to the employees, so that there's a direct correlation that says, I make profit, I share it with you. I don't make profit, I can't share it with you.
This challenge, you say, more important now than ever. I think that there's some of that is because we're looking for people who are competitive in a world where maybe there's a generational shift where people often criticize millennials as being asking too much and giving too little. And at the risk of sounding very old, what do you think about this shift and this generational shift? Do you think that it's true, and do you think that it becomes harder to find people who are willing to go to the battle with you in this environment?
Yeah, I guess I'm the edge of the baby boomers.
I thought you were Gen X.
No, I just caught the edge. But, it was interesting because I came into the business world when we were moving from mainframes to file server computing and LANs. And I remember when I first came in as a young buck, they all found me very abrasive, very pushy, very millennial. I would say, these crazy people that are going to work with, local area networks and email and Microsoft products. And, I think at times it is a little bit oversold, the whole millennial concept. And again, coming back, Max, to the recruiting, and you really need a personal touch now to grab people. I mean, the attention span and the ability to be very smart and have access to Google. I mean, my kids are smarter than me, right? And they're 12 years old because they out-Google me. That's, I think, one of the things that you have to now be able to digitally connect to your people. And is that some of your first touch points are reaching out digitally, but then you're trying to bring them in and get that a little bit that you are special. You are somebody that I'm actually targeting and focusing with. And I still believe people have the same inherent, behaviors and needs.
It's overblown, basically. People make too much of a big deal of the generational gap. I tend to agree, but I also think that somehow one of the reasons why you've been successful for 20 plus years is because you have found a way to attract a more competitive, more hungry group of professionals. People who are just like in a hockey team, they want to win. So is that something that is built into the culture post onboarding, or is that something that you figured out a way to do at the recruitment stage?
Yeah, well, I think the first meeting is that first touch, that first moment is a very important moment. And I guess I've hired people that ended up being some of my most successful executives over the phone. Didn't see them. All I heard was a voice, and this was we didn't have Zoom back 10, 15 years ago. And I would have somebody fly in from Sydney, fly into Manila, show up for their first day. And it was really about, having that feeling and just having somebody passionate and, talk about things like, look, I need somebody who just wants to get on a plane, do whatever it takes. But I'll tell you, when this thing takes off, then we're all going to have, a heck of a rocket ship ride. And, and frankly, that was, in Asia, which was my second company, was Arinzo, starting up SAP HR in Southeast Asia. In the year 1999 sounded like the craziest thing in the world to me. SAP, very expensive, Southeast Asia particularly not investing, in certainly human capital solutions. They were more focused on, at that point, supply chain, finance, procurement, things like that. And, just going in and having my partner at the time, Josh Slice, who's ended up doing very well in life with our exit of Arinzo, I guess it was 12 years later. But coming into
you built that to from zero to a 50 million revenue plus business, something like that?
Yeah, it was funny because I was a Canadian living in Asia, in between Singapore and Manila. And I say this fondly, this crazy Belgian guy, Josh Slice, kept phoning me up and saying, look, we need somebody to start up this, Asia. And he called it the Far East, right? We need this Far East group to be started. And, I basically told...
For people who don't work in Asia, there is no such thing as the Far East. It's not a real region, right?
No, I'm still looking for the Far East.
Yeah. We're talking about like 12 countries that speak 12 different languages with 12 different regulations and laws and so on. Starting Northgate Arinzo in Hong Kong and then into the Philippines, you had to hire across the Far East, as they call it, in different countries. Did you, the recruitment was very different in different parts of Asia? Did you have to adapt your process, or was it more, company culture trumps everything and we'll worry about localizing later?
Yeah, I think back then it was really sponsored by SAP coming into the region. So I had very good connections with the SAP community. And there's a guy by the name of Les Heyman, who's the head of SAP APJ, and Les is no longer with us, but was just a fantastic man, and again a great leader and an inspirational leader. And I guess my point is that I do believe that kind of leadership is something that create. I guess this was back when I had really long hair, and I was even a bit more eccentric than I was even today. Went to Asia and got introduced to a few people. And hired people, and frankly, those people still work for my companies today, a lot of them. But I think in those days you could really word of mouth. It was a bit less of a mature market, so the competition was less. And I would say at SAP HCM professionals in Asia, pretty well every single person I almost see with 10 years of experience have worked for one of my companies. So it's something. Very proud of, but also very proud of that management group that I've created, that some of my best friends in the region. But I think it really was word of mouth and less digital, and this was 20 years ago. Now, on the recruiting front, we were doing things like Taleo and, some of the big enterprise stuff with Arinzo. So that was really the infancy of it. Was the late 90s, was really that whole targeted recruiting stuff was just coming in.
It sounds like a lot of that is relationship based and word of mouth, and that perhaps even though you are a technologist and you did sell these technology platforms, that in your case, what really drove marketing, recruitment marketing and talent attraction was more around executive hiring and more around finding people who are passionate and the human factor. Would you say that still holds true today, that people, we have vendors like TalkPush and others that make a big deal of the candidate experience, but the human elements is still king?
Yeah, I certainly think you have to frame a storyboard that, brings an edginess to it. And I think that, again, the millennials are looking for that, maybe more than they were in my generation. And, my kids will say, Dad, you met Richard Branson. I'll say, yeah, I did meet Richard Branson. Stuff like this, people want to work for some of these types of people. And
right. You could put a picture of Richard Branson on your website and get a few more candidates, perhaps. Yeah,
well, pictures beside Bill McDermott and Jen Morgan and all these kind of people. I think Les Heyman over the days, Hasso Plattner. I've been very blessed to
I kind of know those names, but I don't think the millennials will care so much. I mean, it might help you to attract a couple of executives. But thinking about your time at Shore Solutions, where you went from 200 to 2,000 call center agents in a period of 2 years, those names would not have meant anything to those guys. Like, tell us about that strategy, how you did the ramp up there, and the cool factor that you were able to build in order to multiply the size of your business by 10 in a short period of time.
Yeah, and I guess that's an example too of having moved from professional services with SAP and consulting and exiting that business, and then really, I lived in Manila. So if you're in Manila and you need something to do, what makes sense to do? Well, you do a call center. So that was really one of my objectives. And again, I think in terms of focus and target, obviously the call center industry is another completely different industry. And I think it was very really interesting for myself from a human capital management executive who had all the answers to all the best practices and processes, and now to take that from a more enterprise view into a contact center or BPO, which is volume recruiting, a particularly highly competitive market. Everybody's stealing from everybody, and very much, again, how do you create that vibe that creates the loyalty? And to be honest, I guess what people formula is what I like to call more of a waterfall, which is getting those top managers in your leadership team. They have to be also the ones that create that vibe down to the next level and the next level and the next level. And, we were, I think, lucky enough with Shore that, had a kind of and I think I've framed him. He's this big Australian guy named Jono Smith, and kind of a big rugby guy. So you got him and me, the hockey guy. And the
he sounds guy. Scary.
Yeah.
Sounds like it would scare the candidates away, not attract them.
Well, you'd be surprised. I think there's this, we're going to hang with these guys. And,
all right.
And I shouldn't say guys, because, at Shore was another one of the companies where I created I think one of my strongest management teams, and I think you've met many of them, the Tanyas and Lanny's and Jerry, and we had just a phenomenal group of people. And not only were we hugely successful, but we had a ton of fun. We did stuff that, and again, Shore was also, I think one of the best blends, because it was 2 years, 200 to 2000.
So the fact that you had a ton of fun, for our audience, mainly talent acquisition people, were you able to put that into words or images in a way that it would attract people? How do you convey the message? You put pictures of your parties on the wall?
Yeah, I mean, I think we did have, Tanya, who was my marketing lady at the time, did a great job of creating these sound bites and clips. But it's also, again, when they have those interviews and they have those touch points, that you've got the right lead in, that you grab them quickly. Reputation then quickly takes over. And the reality is, I don't like to overpay people, but I certainly like to pay people what they're worth. So it's another concept where, I want people to have good lives. So I don't want to have the lowest salaries in the business. I want to have people that can build and grow. And certainly the Philippines, again, that's one of the most rewarding aspects, I think, of being an executive there is, now with my 20 years of being there, I can count thousands of people that have changed their lives. And some of them from the poorest situations, but they work hard. They got passion. It's not always about which college they're from. I like the underdog. I like the people that never got a chance. And again, I think maybe a sporting side, but what you want to do is maximize people's strengths, minimize their weaknesses, build on, a team can't have all superstars. You need to respect the plodding accounts payable clerk. It's okay to be a plodding accounts payable.
Give everybody some love, pay them well, hope that the word of mouth and the positive sort of company culture resonates and generates some positive word of mouth, some referrals. And yeah, it sounds pretty simple when you say it like that.
Yeah,
there's no secret sauce. I feel the same way, that it's better to pay a little bit over market rates and reduce attrition and then focus on everything else. And well, you don't have to promise the moon to anybody. You just build a good environment and hope that positive word of mouth carries you. Because really, if you get 20 or 30% of your hires through referrals, employer referral, that means you're doing a good job, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the call center, human capital market is, again, I think where you do need to some degree focus on the nicheness of the marketplace. So you can't have one style fits all. And when I'm recruiting an executive, it's going to be different than a volume recruit. But I guess the story should still be the same, right? The vibe of the company, because that's, again, I think the challenge of trying to get it. And back 20 years ago, I was much more involved with the operational side. So I was at the parties, I was at the coffee, I was at the lunches, I was in the middle of it. As I guess I've taken on more entrepreneurial and chairman roles and less operational, I need my team to be able to take that passion, and it can't be that, we're all disappointed because Darcy didn't come to the meeting. There's got to be a way that you can build that out in. And that could perhaps be there's a certain size of business that I frankly don't enjoy as much as I love them when we've got 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people. When you get to 10,000, somebody else should buy my business and take it, and they should really get rid of me because I'm unmanageable. And it's time to move to the next level. And I don't take offense to that whole concept. I'm a bit proud of it. I guess that's my rebel side that says, I'm good to a certain point, and then I can let some of these big, more corporate enterprise folks who are much smarter than me take it over and take it to the next level.
Well, there's so many different definitions to intelligence. I don't know if they're smarter than you, but maybe they're a little bit more political. Talking about the ideal number for a team, I've been doing some research on, what would be happy. And I think that 2,000 is already way beyond where I could foresee myself, in the sense that I cannot remember 2,000 people's name. And there was research done on the cognitive limits of the number of people that one can remember and be friends with in a community. And it's called Dunbar's number, and numbers like around 150 to 200. I could see myself, working with that, but it's different for everybody for sure. But I think some great advice there, Darcy, about enabling each of your leaders to become the engine for recruitment, rather than try to put it into a formula. Every team needs to have an inspiring leader that wants to create a fun environment in each of their team, and something that everybody can take away from our conversation. What's in store for you in the future? I'm going to continue to, by the way, for the listeners, Darcy was kind enough to give us a chance, because he loves the outsiders so much that he decided to be my first customer at TalkPush some 6 years ago. And so we'll continue to advise TalkPush in its next phase of growth. What are you working on next? What are you working on now?
Well, I guess, as you know, Max, I was sure we had a small SAP group, which when I sold that to an Australian company, then we took the SAP piece and grew that Shore piece into something called Synchrony, which was, again, a company that about a year ago I sold to Rising, which is a big U.S. partner. So, put in a good year. I had a nice transition. I'm very proud to see that, we became number one in Asia for SAP SuccessFactors partners within, and this is mind-blowing, within 12 months we were named the number one partner in the region, which I couldn't be more proud of. And now they will become, and they are probably the biggest global partner in the world. And that's what I set out to do. And happy that, Rising will take this to the next level. So I guess I'm settling in. The whole Corona thing, I guess, or COVID stuff is certainly, I think, created a challenge for all of us, which is just another challenge on the road. It's a tough one. And when we go back, Max, to the millennial discussions and things that, I think you could argue that this generation was fairly entitled with very little resistance to their success. I think now...
you think this will teach them a few lessons?
I think I didn't have a World War II. I didn't have a lot of the tough stuff that, our generations before us had. And boy, now we've got our World War III, literally, that we're going to have to deal with. So I'm looking forward to, as we go through this, take opportunities.
So, Darcy, thank you for sharing these cool insights. And to wrap up our conversation, would you have any practical tips for employers today on how to stand out in a crowded group? You were competing for talent in some of the most crowded markets for talent across the BPO sector, in particular in the Philippines and in Asia. How did you manage to stand out, and what tips do you have for talent acquisition professionals to build a different brand that doesn't look and sound like everyone else?
Well, I think, number one from my perspective is, to have a passion, love what you do, have the passion, have the drive. I think, again, in today's world, you have to digitize that. So again, it's to create the edge. I build businesses, I start businesses. And, one of the things that I have learned over the last 10 years particularly, and that was a great example, was Shore, was that you have to digitize that cool factor. And, as an entrepreneur, I think that is really an absolute key, is to lead by example, have the passion, have the drive, bring in people that share that, and then be able to digitize that, because that is really how you can scale yourself and move yourself and get to your attention that, in the old days might have been, you could do that in events and whatnot. Frankly, now you can do this digitally. But, one of the things is a warning that I have is don't digital spam. Because I see companies right now, if I see another one of their LinkedIns and, they're spamming everywhere, focus.
LinkedIn is the worst. It is the absolute worst when it comes to spam. I mean, I don't know how they managed to do that, but it is mayhem out there. Absolutely. So the digitization we didn't spend too much time on, but obviously that's been a core theme running through your career, is first build a great management team that's going to communicate the employer value proposition, and then digitize it so that you're not overly dependent on individuals, I guess, to get the message out.
Yep. And I think in today's world, again, I've always been able to manage multiple countries without being in them. At one time, I managed 15 countries with the Rinzo, Middle East, Asia, Canada, delivery centers. And, I used to call it management by email, because again, that was the digital side 10 to 20 years ago.
Email.
If you've got the right people on the ground, what I always found was that, at least with an email, the same message came at the same time to the same people. I'm not a big believer on conference calls and having calls for the sake of calls, because I've often found that my management team went away and they all took a different message out of it somehow, and probably tailored a little bit to their own benefit to a certain degree.
Yeah, you pick and choose. When it's black on the white, it's less room for confusion. You save a lot of time with calls. I've been trying to do more written asynchronous communication, which is another fancy way of saying email, and spending less time on calls myself. I think that's it's very powerful.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're about done on time. Thank you, Darcy, for spending this time with me and with our listeners, and looking forward to see what's next in store for you for the next entrepreneurial adventure. And thanks for all your advice throughout the years.
Okay. Thanks, Max. And looking forward to seeing TalkPush get to that next level. Keep up the good work, buddy.
That was Darcy Lalonde, a friend of TalkPush, serial entrepreneur, who told us about how important it is to build a core executive team that's going to help to drive recruitment and share the fun of your company culture. Thank you, Darcy. Hope you enjoyed the interview. If you want to hear more about recruitment and how it drives business, please listen to some of our other episode. If you liked it, leave us a review and subscribe to this channel. Hope to see you soon.